Welcome to video lesson 12.2 on measures of dispersion. Okay. Now in this lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to use finding the range and standard deviation of a data set to compare two data sets. Okay. Now there are a lot of notes today. The measure of dispersion is just a measure that describes the spread of the data set. Okay. So how the data is spread apart. And the simplest measure of dispersion is called the range. And you're familiar with doing this. Every time that you talked about measures of central tendency, they also usually introduce the range to you as well, which is the difference between the greatest value and the least value in a data set. Now, a disadvantage to using the range in order to describe the spread of a data set is that you're only using two of the data values to actually find the range, the highest value and the lowest value. So a more accurate measure of dispersion that uses all of the values of a data set is called the standard deviation. Okay, and that's a measure of how much a typical value in the data set differs from the mean. Now there are quite a few steps to finding the standard deviation of a data set. The first step is to find the mean of the data. And if you recall from yesterday's lesson, that is just adding up all of the values in the data set and then dividing by the total number of values that you had. That will give you the mean. Then the step 2 is to find the difference between each data value and the mean. So the way this is written here, okay, that's what the mean is. Okay? So that's how they write that. And then what you're doing is squaring each of those differences. Okay? So what you want to do is then use a calculator to find the square root of all of that. Okay? So what we want to do is to create a table that sort of looks like this. We have our values, okay? Then we have the difference. So we have the value, the x, okay? Then we have the difference between the mean and the value, and then we square that result, okay? So that's what we're trying to do there, okay? All right, so let's go through some examples. The first one is going to be about finding the range. So it says 2 reality cooking shows select 12 contestants each. The ages of the contestants are shown in the tables, and we need to find the mean and the ranges of the ages for each show and compare our results. So in order to find the mean, again, we have to add up all of these data values, okay? And then we'll divide them by 12 for show A. So the mean for A, okay, is going to be the total, which is 300 divided by 12, and that equals 25. Okay. Now, sometimes it's helpful to put the values in order from least to greatest, but you really only need the lowest and the highest value, so you can just look for the lowest value, which in this case is 19, and the highest value, which is 31. Okay. So to find the range of the ages in A, you're going to take 31, the greatest value, subtract 19, the lowest value, and then we get 12. Okay. So the mean is 25, and then the range is 12. And all this data is in years. Okay. Now we want to find the mean for B. So again, we'll add up all the ages in B, and then that total is 312 divided by, again, there's 12 values. 312 divided by 12 is 26. Okay. And then for the range of B, we need to find the highest and the lowest values. Okay, so the lowest value is still 19 again, but the highest value, okay, is 48. All right, so we have 48 minus 19, okay, which is 29 years. So we have 26 for the mean, and the range is 29 years. Okay. So comparing our results shows that the means are about the same. Okay, so when we compare them, we can just write sentences comparing them. The means are about the same. Okay. However, the range of B is greater, so the data is more spread out. Okay. All right, now in example 2, we want to be able to find the standard deviation of the ages for show A and example 1. And we're going to use a table to show our work. Okay, so the first step, we're going to make a table. The X would be all of our values. Okay, so we just list the 12 values that were in the table. Okay, then what we need to do is we use the mean. Now remember, the mean we just found for A was 25. Okay, so the first table are the actual values in the table. Okay, the second one is the mean. Right, so these are the actual values. The X, then the X with a little line over it, that's the mean. And then this is the difference between the mean and the actual values. And then the last column is squaring the difference. Okay, so our first step, we already know the mean, so just rewrite that down. And this table is already completed, but I'm going to write down the steps that we took to find that. Okay, so again, we find the mean, which we already found in example 1, and it was 25. Okay, so that's what the X with the little line over it is. And in step 2, we're finding the difference between the mean, or between each data value and the mean. So that's the X minus the mean, okay? And that's what they're doing right here in this step. Okay, so this was step 2, and this column was step 1. All right, now in step 3, okay, we're squaring the difference. Not the difference, square each difference. So that's this last column here. Okay, so this was step 3. And now in step 4, we have to find the mean of the squares. Okay. And then, so we're going to add up all of these values in the last column of our table. Okay. And then we're going to divide by 12. So we'll add, and we'll do this quickly here. Okay, so we're adding 25 plus 16 plus 36 plus 9 plus 0 plus 4 plus 4 plus 16 plus 25 plus 25 plus 16 plus 36. So that's 212. Okay. Divided by, again, there's still 12 values. That shouldn't have changed. And we can round that to the nearest tenth. So that's 17.7, about. Okay. Now what we need to do in step 5 is to use a calculator to find the square root. Okay, so we find the square root of 17.7, which is approximately 4.2. Okay. So the standard deviation is 4.2. Okay. And then we had to sort of explain or interpret the results. Okay. So that means that the typical age of a contestant on show A differs from the mean by about 4.2 years. Okay. So the typical age of a contestant on show A, okay, differs from the mean by about 4.2 years. Okay, and that's our interpreting the results. Okay. Now, I didn't go through actually doing all of this, but again, we list all of the actual values from the table in our X column. Then we list the mean in the next column, okay, which the mean will be the same for all of them, okay, so the mean didn't change. And then we write the difference that each of these values is from the original value to the mean. So 20 minus 25 is negative 5. 29 minus 25 is 4. Okay, so each of the original values from the mean. Okay, so we start with the original value always and subtract the mean from that. Then we square that value, and then we find the mean of those values all together. And once we find all that, we take the square root of that mean, and that will be our standard deviation. So again, it's a long, kind of tedious process, but that gives us a better measure of dispersion, okay, more accurate than just the range. All right, now we have 2 practice problems. Okay, it says, after the first week, the 25-year-old is voted off of show A, and the 48-year-old is voted off of show B. That shouldn't be a question mark, sorry, just a period. And we want to know, so period, and how does this affect the mean and the range of the remaining contestants on each cell? And explain. So how does voting off, taking the 25-year-old out of show A affect the mean and the range of show A? And how does voting off, taking out the 48-year-old from show B affect the mean and the range? Okay, so those are the 2 questions you have for part 1. Then question 2 asks you to find the standard deviation of show B and interpret your result. So you're doing everything we just did in example 2, but you're doing it with the values from show B. Okay, so you'll have your table again of listing all of these values, all of the ages under the X column that are in the show B table. Then the mean, which we already found to be 26, and then the difference from these original ages to the mean. Okay, and then you'll square those, then you'll find the mean of all those, and then take the square root. Okay, and then make sure you just write what that means, that little sentence at the end. Okay, this is new information and it's a lot of steps, so please make sure you jot down any questions that you have along the process and be sure to ask them in class tomorrow. Thank you and have a great day.